Welcome to today's episode of the Hot and Steamy podcast. We'd like to first recognize our sponsors, Kelly Garza of Steamy Chick and Kimberly Ann Johnson of MAGA Mamas. Follow them on Instagram at Steamy Chick and at MAGA Mamas.
Hot, steamy, hot, steamy, hot, steamy, hot, steamy, steamy, hot, steamy.
All right, now for our favorite segment of the show, where we have a guest expert.
Wow.
Discuss something pertinent with us. So today we have the wonderful, the fabulous, the brilliant Raquel Lemus. Woo! Welcome, Raquel.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Did I say your last name right? Is it Lemus?
Yeah, Lemus.
Lemus.
That works.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So just so you guys can know a little bit about Raquel, I'm going to read out her bio. So Raquel is an Afro-Latina midwife, educator, and gatekeeper of sacred transitions, honored to help you align to your healing. Native to the hills of Los Angeles, her family extends from El Salvador and Colombia. She was born a midwife. She comes from a family of nurses, midwives, and healers. She's always worked with families. As a 5-year-old, she would always say, I'm going to work with mothers and babies. The first real job she had was as a postpartum doula, although she didn't know that that's what she wanted to do, or that's what it was called at 16. So instead of attending summer camp, she'd be in the ER department of Martin Luther King Jr. Hospital, observing her mom and her team of nurses work. A bit nerdy, she knows. But it all shaped her to be the holistic healthcare provider that she is for you today. After working in the nonprofit field for a few years, she was feeling extreme burnout and fatigue. She says, I felt gross in my body and disconnected from my passion and purpose. She started taking courses on body image, sensuality, and her period, trying to get back to her joy and to the true essence of who she knew she could be. She says, my journey with my wellness ignited my love of the uterus and all of its phases. I understand the uterus as a center of creation. I understand that the uterus as a center of creation connects you to your joy, power, self-love, and so much more. Regardless of what you choose to create, your uterine wellness is vital to creating the life that you want. Yay.
Woo-hoo.
So brilliant. I love this bio. Every time I read it, I'm just like, yes. So is there anything that isn't in this bio that you would like your audiences to know about you?
Yeah, I think when people hear midwife, excuse me, when people hear midwife, they just assume babies and pregnancy. And I really just continuously want to change the paradigm around that midwives are so much more than just for pregnancy. And that, at least for me, I'm a full spectrum midwife. I got you covered from first period to last period and everything in between. And that's, again, honoring all the cycles of the uterus. It's this continuous in-between place, right? We look at the word midwife or even the words wife, right? To be married to the in-between is kind of how I see it. It's also the translation of to be with women. That doesn't specify mothers and babies, It's just to be. But for me, it feels like I'm married to the in-between places. So I see more than just women for my clients, but I'm married to the in-between places, the in-between places of your period, the in-between places of between fertility and pregnancy, between menopause and menstruation, between menarche and bleeding, between all of these different phases. And so, I feel like that's one thing.
Yeah, that's a great explanation for it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
dope. Thank you so much. And on that vein, I have a question for you that I didn't send. This is like a surprise question. Okay, cool. So in my work, I don't know if we've talked extensively about this, but I'm an intuitive healer and I do readings with people. And then I also do steaming. And I have quite a lot of clients who have fibroids. And whenever I tap into a bit, like when I bring the two together and I do a little bit of intuitive listening and healing while I'm giving a steam or while I'm doing intake with those clients, I often find that the presence of a fibroid relates to some sort of creative stifling. Like they hate their job or they've given up a creative pursuit that they love in service of doing too much labor, or they're disconnected from their joy. So whatever they're creating really doesn't resonate with them. And I was wondering if that's something that you've seen too, but in a more like in a different way or in the same way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's another aspect of my work that I'm always drawing from my intuition, from my spirit, from my ancestors and my guides. I can't separate them. There's just no way. And that's not my philosophy of life. Like everything is interconnected. So, yeah, I definitely see similarities in, withholding yourself from your joy. Like you said, in the formation of maybe a job or, a partnership or some type of desire that has been put on the back burner. And sometimes that's different. From some people, it's holding on to frustration, or every person is so individually formulated that it can come up in
all kinds of ways. Yeah.
All kinds of ways.
Yeah, so true.
And sometimes, yes, there are similarities, but yeah, I've definitely noticed that branch. And that's why for me, I'm all about the consciousness of the uterus, right? And being like, just talk to her, talk to her and see what's up, or talk to them. I don't know how your uterus identifies gender, right? Or if there's more than one, consciousness is like such a big thing. So more expansive than just a she or he. And when you formulate, part of my work is formulating that relationship with my client and their uterus, to be like, this is how you start to have that conversation. So that, not necessarily so that you're not relying on me, but so that you're not relying on me. Right. I don't want you to have to come to me to give you answers about your body. That's not, that doesn't feel sustainable to me,
right.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah. Okay. We need to talk more about that.
Yes.
Another time. Yeah. So would you please, for me and for my husband and for all our listeners, explain the differences between an obstetrician, a midwife, and a doula?
This is mainly for me.
It's for you and a lot of people. I just did this exactly for a whole school of nurses the other day. I taught a coping skills class to them. So we all need that clarification. So yeah, an OB, pretty much everybody knows what an OB is, obstetrician, right? Obstetrics is kind of the name that was given to the blanket of like pregnancy related conditions in the medical system. So an OB is a doctor and they've been through medical school and all of that entails medical school. And they also have some training in surgery. So obstetricians do have the ability to do surgery, right? And when we're thinking about it within a labor and birth context, we're thinking about it as far as C-sections go. Okay.
Okay.
A midwife is also medically trained. So we go through, depending on our route of education, it's direct entry or nurse midwives. So you have direct entry midwives, which you'll often hear called LMs, licensed midwives, or CPMs, certified professional midwives, or both. We use kind of those titles interchangeably. And then you'll hear nurse midwife, so LNM, licensed nurse midwives, right? And so the nurse midwives have a master's degree in nursing and went through nursing school and then completed a master's in midwifery, still within the context of them giving predominantly assisting births in a hospital, right?
Okay.
And both actually obstetricians do have the ability to attend home births. Like if they chose to do home births, an obstetrician could in fact set up a home birth practice. So could a nurse midwife, right? They have the flexibility between moving in a hospital setting and a home birth setting, right? And then the CPMs or LMs, which is me, right? We did direct entry. I did not go to nursing school. My whole family is nursing. My mom's a nurse. My stepdad's a nurse. My sister's a nurse. So for me, I was like, that's not my route. And so I went direct entry. So I did an additional school specifically related to midwifery and got all my medical training there. So I can suture, I can draw labs. As midwives, we can assess the baby like an obstetrician would, and we can receive the babies as well. So we are trained in minor emergencies as far as like bleeding or having to resuscitate a baby. But our expertise is normal physiological birth, right? So all the aspects of like the prenatal care, postpartum care, I can do like an obstetrician. You know what I'm trying to say. I could say that 10 times fast. And then there's the doulas, and doulas are not medically trained. Okay. So they don't have the ability to assess dilation or give you an IV in your labor or give you Pitocin if you're hemorrhaging. Like they do not have that ability. They are there for emotional, physical, and educational support to facilitate conversations with your care providers, to help you maneuver through the early parts of labor, to give you coping techniques, massage, aromatherapy, and all those things. And then we can go into the gamut of other trainings that, doulas can also have, from placenta encapsulation to baby massage to, aromatherapy and all kinds of things like that. Yeah.
Thank you. Did you have any further questions
about that? No, I was gonna ask why she chose it.
Oh yeah,
but that I really appreciated that because I didn't know that was the breakdown of it. So thank you for answering the most important question for me.
You're welcome.
Yeah, but why did you choose midwifery?
I don't know if people so much choose midwifery. Or if midwifery chooses you.
It chose me.
No, that's not true. My ancestors are like, I feel it in the background. You chose here to come down and be this way. For me, I feel like it's a choice. Yes, it is a choice that I made a very, very long time ago, before I was even a human in this body. And that we could probably have a whole other conversation about. But that is like part of the sacred work that I came in intentionally being groomed into. This is why I used to have that elder, and this is why I say now that says you were born a midwife. You don't become a midwife. The training in between is kind of, a bonus. You actually know what you're doing. But I think for me, like with having to make that physical choice, I think whenever you come up with like, oh man, is this my life passion or is this part of my work? You do come up with that front of having to make the physical choice of being like, I could do something else. I studied psychologist. People are always commenting on how man, are you sure you never wanted to do a therapist training? And that was being a huge possibility for me to become a therapist or, do that type of work. And it's a vital part of the work that I do. I know I'm good at it, but I was always like, nope, that's not for me. I didn't choose that path.
Okay.
So part of me again was I'm always thinking about communities and thinking about families and thinking about then our broader world. Right. And so for me, I'm like, well, where do we start with these imprints on us as people? Where do we start with these, I'm not good enough, or I can't do this, or, you know, and what's kind of the earliest point that we can start to make sure that as people, we are connected to the truth of who we are without so much disconnection, right? Because a form of trauma disconnects us from the reality of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that be an emotional trauma, you weren't able to sing when you wanted to sing at that recital, or an actual trauma like poverty or sexual assault, or I don't want to say actual trauma, just various aspects of trauma that separate us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I was like, how can I get to more of the root of keeping new beings coming in, babies, and people connected to that root of the truth of who they are and the consciousness of that they hold to make the impact that they want to make as a plumber or as a basketball player or as an artist or as the best, you know, waffle maker or like whatever it is that your joy is, that you don't be like, well, I got to be a lawyer instead of making waffles because that's what my family chose for me, you know? And for me, that was like birth. I was like, okay, let's get to like, if I can help hold a container for labor and birth, and it started in that way. If I can help a container, it was birth focused for these imprints, then these kids are coming in with less trauma. And if there's less trauma, then they're closer to the truth of what they hold. And then I expanded and be like, okay, well, then we got to just deal with the trauma at all the phases of the uterus, because communities come from the uterus. And part of our trauma as a society has been the separation from the divine feminine aspect and from the uterus as something to be honored, right? Regardless of what gender you choose to have. If you're a carrier of the uterus, that comes with specific responsibilities in your awareness and things. Just like if you're a carrier, you know, of a scrotum, that comes with different responsibilities and different awarenesses, regardless of what gender you identify as.
I'm probably going to watch that part over and over again.
Over and over, and there are going to be plenty of conversations around that.
Send it back to me too. I should watch it again. That was really good.
Yes. That was brilliant. Yeah. I'm so glad that we're doing this again.
I just had an image, like while you were talking, I had an image of you like them teaching you ABCs, and you were just like, but what about them babies though?
Probably.
Yeah. That was brilliant. And and then I feel like you and I just have a lot we actually need to sit down and talk about, like a super lot.
Yeah, for real.
Do you want to ask the next?
Wait, I'm sorry. I zoned out.
I can do it.
Where are we?
So I'm interested in knowing what you really love most about midwifery, and then what is the most challenging about midwifery. I mean, and you could answer as midwifery, or like if you have a broader term for all of your work. And you went into that earlier, but
it's all midwifery. Yeah. My mom had gallbladder surgery this past week, and I had to be at the hospital with her. And I was like, oh, for a second, I was like, oh, I'll just be in there. And then I was in there and I was like, oh no, you're midwifing this situation. You're like, you're holding space for her to go through this. You're holding space for her recovery. Anyway, so it's all, I think for me, I'm broadening the term to be like the wife of the in-between spaces, flipping it, be like, I'm married to those middle spaces. And I think the most gratifying or exciting aspects of my work are when we unravel a pattern of oppression or suppression and create liberation. And when I see my clients make that click for themselves, of how they've been holding on. And I use the word oppression or suppression in, yes, the general term of us being under some certain oppressive systems, but also the oppression of like your anger and how that's been holding over you, or this idea that you had to be this type of person, right? So I use that term very broadly. And so it's exciting for me when we've been doing this, because a lot of my work is emotional work. So when we've been kind of cultivating these awarenesses with people, and then for them, it's like, oh my gosh, I created this boundary, or I turned in this thing, or I had this beautiful conversation, and they just open up to this liberating point. And that space then allows for the cyst to go, or the fibroid to the release, or the baby to come through, right? Or the body to heal, or the lubrication to come back into the body, or the orgasm to come, right? And so it's those moments of like, yes, okay, that is cool. Like, that is why I'm doing this work. Yay. And sometimes I don't see it because they have to work through it. Like, I'm there cultivating it, but I'm also don't want to be like, you can't take people. And I'm sure you know this in your work. But even especially as maybe an intuitive worker, you're working with other aspects and traditions, you may have an insight to where that person is before that person is ready to like see it themselves. Yeah. So as a care provider, you have to be like, okay, how do I not force you into this, but how do I start giving you the support that you need so you can take yourself there? Right. So that is, I think, the most rewarding part, is like seeing that moment of like liberation. And that comes in like many forms. The baby's here, or I'm going into labor, the cyst popped, or my fibroid's coming out, or I had the greatest orgasm of my life, or I squirted for the first time. Like it, and I know it's all related to that, I think the most challenging aspects of my work are the in-between moments of when those things happen, and wondering like, if I'm doing a good job, it's all my stuff. It's not actually the work. It's my own personal thing. It's my moments of doubt or judgment, or am I doing this in the best way? Is this really, did I listen to my ancestors and my guides right? Like, did you have another mission? And am I holding myself back? Also, like, it's those moments that feel the most challenging, and those moments also too where you do see some, on the same vein, where maybe you do see something that it's just like, if you just got this one thing, I know it would be so different. and you can't force it onto anybody. And I think that goes with life, like my whole life, and even regular relationships. So it's like those moments. But I think that the doubt, and am I doing this with integrity, and constantly kind of like, not constantly questioning it, but like just making sure that I am presenting myself and presenting my work from a place that is heart-centered for me. Right? And then I think the other aspect is like just the weird hours and nourish, like just making sure I allow myself to receive as much as I give. Yeah.
Wait,
Those two things.
Please don't go past that, like, just yet. Even just making sure that you receive just as much as you give, can you both talk a little bit about your experiences with that? Because I think that's an important part that people don't get to talk and hear enough about. And I'm gonna check on making sure all our stuff is good.
Oh yeah, something turned over there. Yeah, thanks, baby. I also was like about to comment on that, but thank you for inviting us both to go a little deeper into it. I am really, let me not say it that way. I am still learning a lot about not giving more than I receive. Like, I am still even learning how to recognize the imbalance because I'm so accustomed to living in that imbalance. Like, how to be like, okay, I'm exhausted. I gave too much. Now I need to like take care of myself. But even like, how do I know, okay, I'm heading into exhaustion, or that's how nascent I am in learning like how to balance care of self with care of others. And so this is like a really huge thing in our relationship because being married has allowed me to have a constant reminder to be like, hey, did you eat? Hey, did you put a boundary here? Are you letting, the client run this session, or are you running it? Are you charging what you should charge for the amount of labor you're doing and that kind of stuff? So I'm really grateful to him for that. But then also like, it's my responsibility. So I can't always just be like, well, Michael, tell me when it's time for me to pull back. Like I need to be good at being like, stop, take a breath, pull back. Yeah. So that's sort of where I am with it. And the first step into it was removing the guilt. Like I sort of bought into that whole narrative that like women are supposed to, especially women of color, are supposed to take care of everyone and everything and just sort of run the entire society with no, like, going to heaven is our reward, or whatever it is. Like, this is our, other people's, the society working is our reward. But actually just being like, no, everybody's supposed to put in. Like, if you here, everybody's supposed to help. We don't have to do it ourselves. So that was the first thing, like releasing that guilt and just being like, I don't have to feel bad about saying no. I don't have to feel bad about sleeping in. I don't have to feel bad about quitting my job, changing careers, doing things I love instead of things that someone else told me is like commendable, So that's sort of where I am with it.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think as you're talking, I feel exactly the same way. Like I'm still learning about that for sure. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's always changing. And then this other aspect is, again, like if I believe in community and I'm trying to build communities through the uterus and through that uterine consciousness, then how do I activate that later, And especially as I'm not in partnership right now, so I don't have somebody there who I can be like, hey, draw that bath water for me when I get home,
Yeah.
It's like my vision. Just be like, babe, it's
Pull out the glitter.
Pull out the glitter. Calling that person in, right? Mm-hmm. So part of it is like, who do I surround myself with? Who is my community? And does my community see me? Mm-hmm. Do I allow them to see me? Mm-hmm. Am I surrounded by people who nourish and care for me? And I think this kind of really solidified when maybe a couple of weeks ago, I think I had been overdoing it. And my homegirl was like, oh, come over, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so I went over to her house and she was like, let me cook for you. And so like she cooked this delicious meal for me. And it was her and her partner. And she sat down and she said like this beautiful prayer while we were eating. And I started bawling. Like I almost get kind of teary-eyed thinking about it now. I was just like bawling because I was like, you need people to take care of you. We all need people to just show us and allow ourselves to receive that care. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to that idea of like having people that you don't have to explain yourself to, that you don't have to be like, you need to take care of me because I just did all this for this person. Like it's just people that it's like, no, I see you. Let's go for a drive. Let's have this conversation. Come over. Let me cook for you.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the stuff within myself that I need to do, too. Like connecting back to my own practices. And we can have a whole conversation about that. But I think first it comes with, I guess, like you said, the mind frame. being like, I deserve to receive as much as I give, and I absolutely need to, or else I'm going to burn out and not be able to provide.
Yeah. And I know very clearly, like when I actually do the self-care, like, and my guides outlined very clearly for me, like before a session, here are the things you do. Here's what you do during a session. And this is the aftercare. Like there's no question about the order and like the things necessary for me to provide a healthy service, to a client. But, and I'm always very clear, like, after a session where I haven't followed all the rules, it's very different than after a session when I have followed all the rules. Like, if I don't, I'm just depleted. I can barely, like, I get dizzy, like, my joints hurt, like, like, I can't even, like, I just can't even. And then, like, when I do it all right, I can have a full day. Like, I can do so many more things, before and after. So, yeah, just following my own advice that I give to my clients. Like, do this, have a healthy practice, love yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. It's so funny. And then there was another thing that you said that I wanted you to speak more on.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah. There were two things in there, and one of them was what we just talked about.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Next time. Yeah. Oh, man. This was so good, Raquel.
Yeah.
Okay. So my next question is, do you incorporate cultural knowledge and practices into sort of the clinical knowledge and practices that you use?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think everybody's gotten a hint of that in my conversation.
Yeah.
But yes. I mean, cultural practices can be, I think, a lot of different things. I have various different teachers. I mean, a cultural practice could be using a rebozo, and I definitely use the rebozo, that long fabric that can catch a baby. It can shift hips. It can help with positioning. It can do all kinds of different things. And then, I mean, I'm not just from one place. I'm an amalgamation of all different types of, I'm an Afro-Latina, and that opens me up, I think, to just different aspects of my ancestors. When I think of culture, I think of my ancestry. I think of those living and non-living, and I think of my spiritual practices, and yeah, I totally incorporate those, even as just to go in and hold me first. So by default, everyone is being held by what I practice, for even just myself.
Yeah.
I don't have to talk to you about it. I don't have to bring it up in a session necessarily. And I might sometimes, if I'm getting that okay from the person and they're receiving it and they're wanting to go on a deeper level with it, then I might, but I may never mention any of the cultural or spiritual practices that I draw from in a session with somebody outright. But know that that's what holds me. That's what gives me what I need to do this work. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be doing this.
Right.
Is the thing. So, and then as far as like techniques go, I've had some training from like elders from the indigenous lands of the America, and from Mexico, that have given me that knowledge and that support. So again, it just expands my tool belt. I may not use that with everybody. It may be like, okay, this is culturally relevant for this person, or I just feeling that this person needs some of this info. So as far as like a massage technique or a prayer or an herbal recommendation, those come in as just like my tool belt. And sometimes I use them with people, and sometimes I use something else with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that is part of the work that I'm continuing. I am getting ready to go study back in my homeland, one of my homelands in Colombia, with some of the Afro-Indigenous midwives out there. So that's coming up for me in 2020. And so that's going to be a whole other basket of, I don't even know yet.
That
but
sounds amazing. Are you going to be in Cali?
I'll be incorporating, I'm sure, later.
Are you going to be in Cali?
No. So my dad is out there, so he's in Bogota, but the Afro-Indigenous midwives are on the coast of Buenaventura and that area.
Nice.
So, and we'll see.
Yeah.
I plan to do some traveling around. So you never know what kind of elder or teacher is going to show up when you're, at the grocery store sometimes, especially in those places.
That sounds so amazing. When are you going to do that?
2020. I'm still working out the details, but probably mid-year around, April, May, June-ish. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I'm so excited for you. That's really
Thank
cool.
you.
So how did you get involved with Steamy Chick?
So I have known Kelly for a bit, Kelly Garza, right? And who's the creator of Steamy Chick. And I knew her when she was just started out. I have one of her OG chairs, and we had met.
The one with the toilet stool, like the toilet top, toilet seat. Yeah.
That's gonna be like a museum piece later, I think, Be like, this is what our ancient ancestors used. Take care of their womb.
2013. Yeah.
Right. And they'll be like, wow, that must have been so innovative for them then, right? We're going to have something totally different. So I have one of those, and I remember meeting her at this particular uterine health workshop, and we were both kind of in the start, and she comes up to me. She's like, we're going to be friends. And I was like, okay, cool. And so we kind of kept in contact with where we were. We weren't really connected at that point. We were just kind of following each other's work and supporting, and would meet in community spaces and then be out. And I went off to midwifery school. She opened a store out here in LA. And, we were still in awareness and connecting continuously as we were both moving. And then when I got back, I did her peri-steam hydrotherapy course, one of the first ones that she had up and running. And then we just connected again. And she reached out to me. She was like, Raquel, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm going with the school. I know you have this knowledge. I trust you. We had a whole conversation. And that's how I started doing the consults, and still, are connected to doing a lot of the consults, referrals from her, the Steamy Chick midwife. So
I
connected.
I've taken. Have I completed your anatomy? You did the anatomy course, right?
I did the anatomy.
I haven't finished it. I think I have a couple more parts of it to do, but it's just so brilliant. The reason it's taking me so long is because it's so much information. You really, I feel like none of the books I read cover all of the things that you cover. It's just brilliant. So I'm so grateful for that course. And then do you have other courses in the Institute?
Not in the Institute as of yet. I will be doing some guest speaking in the next week or two for some courses that Kelly has coming out. So, And then I have a couple courses that I have in the making. So those will be out soon.
Yeah.
As well.
Same. I'm the same way. I'm working on a course and I'm like, it'll be there at some point.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that anatomy course is amazing. So I'm really looking forward to your other courses. Okay. How did you get involved in the 4th trimester vaginal steam study? Were you there from I came in at like the tail end. Were you there from the very, very beginning?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think even before they had talked about it, or they had started to talk about it, Kelly had brought it up, and she's like, "Look, this is what we're working to do. This is the situation. We know that we need a pilot study and to get, potentially more interest into this area, and I've connected with, Kimberly Johnson. And so she had a phone conversation and we were like, how are we going to do this with folks? And she was like, you came into mind. I don't trust anybody else.
Yeah. Valid.
And I was like, I'm down.
Yeah.
Usually when Kelly approaches me with an idea, it's not really like, let me think about it.
Right.
It's like, oh, what are we doing? All right.
Right.
And by when do you, like, what are the details so I can just organize around it?
Right.
Hence the podcast. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
It's like, okay, I'm down. Let's do this. And then she brought me on a call with Kimberly so that we could all three meet so she could resonate with me too and make sure I was a good fit with her, because both of them are going to be taking on the funding and the campaigning for it, right? To generate that. And they have their names on it, of course. So we wanted to make sure that we all resonated. So we did that. And then we just started formulating, okay, what is it going to look like? What is it logistically going to look like for you? How do we recruit people? What do the visits need to look like? And that's how I started to get involved. Yeah.
Okay. So we have already sort of done interviews with Kimberly and Kelly, and I asked them both like some questions about how it was designed. And when it came to which indicators they chose, they both really brought up you and like what midwives check for. Because Kelly was saying there's no sort of definition of postpartum recovery. Like there's no standard. It's just sort of like at 6 weeks, can you have sex again? Okay, bye. Like that's sort of nothing in between. But midwives have a set of things that they check for. And then those two being moms were just like, well, this is what I know that I dealt with when I was like, am I healthy? Am I doing this? Do I feel like that? Do I have this yet? Is this returned back to before I was pregnant? So those sort of all came together. But you were definitely the one that they were like, well, midwives do this. So Raquel, brought in these indicators. So I was hoping if you could please go through the indicators in the study and just help us understand why each of them was important to measure or to monitor.
Totally. So, so that's a big, I guess, difference, I think, also between obstetric care, even nurse midwifery care, and midwifery care, unlicensed midwifery care. So in your typical scenario, you're only getting one postpartum visit. The baby has a couple, but you as the birthing person only get one at 6 weeks. Where for me, and this varies from other midwives, but most midwives will see you anywhere from about 4 to 6 times, if not more, throughout your postpartum, which is in itself a huge difference. So we are definitely looking at like blood pressure, like your vitals. What are your vitals? Your vitals are like blood pressure, pulse, how are you breathing? Like how is blood moving through your body essentially? And so looking at blood pressure, looking at pulse, one is just kind of have a baseline on things. And, those are pretty general baselines of stuff that everybody should know, right? Blood pressure can also be really impactful when we start to talk about preeclampsia. And people know preeclampsia is something that can manifest during pregnancy and labor and birth. But what they don't know is that it can also happen in the postpartum. And so blood pressures is one of the indicators for preeclampsia, and making sure that, the labor and birth scenario brings up your blood pressure. So yeah, you have a question.
Yeah. Is the danger a high blood pressure or is it a low blood pressure, or could it be either?
It could be either, but generally higher. Higher is more scary because higher is like your body is just exerting too much effort, and you could have a seizure. With preeclampsia can become eclampsia, which is an actual seizure manifests. So, and especially with the rates specifically for women of color of death and infection that are on the rise, that's something that we wanted to make sure that we were looking at is the blood pressure. And then, pulse, we want to know how your heart is. Pulse can also be an indicator of infection. It can be an indicator of stress, right? As well as how you're breathing, right? That's how oxygen flows throughout our body. So we want to know, like, how are this person taking respirations? How are they acclimating? Like, can you take deep breaths? Some of the other things we're looking at were like fundus and fundal height. So the fundus is the topmost part of your uterus. And once you have a baby, it like lowers halfway down almost immediately after birth. And then subsequently it moves back to underneath the pubic bone to where it was before you gave birth, right? So measuring the tonality of it, meaning how firm it is, how soft it is, can be an indicator of bleeding. Making sure that someone's not excessively bleeding. And then what was interesting about the study that I don't normally do is, as midwives, we feel it and we know, like, when we measure it finger breaths below the umbilical button, right? So if my umbilical button's here, then we say, okay, that's 1 finger breath, that's 3 finger breaths, that's 4, etc. But this time I actually measured it with measuring tape, and I took the width of each uterus. So when I was feeling them, I was like, and I don't think there's anybody who's ever done that, at least not recorded in data.
Yeah.
But that was a thing that we did. Like, how wide are these uterus? How long really are they from the pubic bone? I don't think we've done that in the postpartum for folks. So those were really important in just assessing recovery, assessing how bleeding is happening, how, this is the place that needs to be renourished. So how is it doing? Talking about bleeding, we assess bleeding, and there are different phases of bleeding that are normal in the postpartum. And so we were just documenting those, again, to see what's clearing out, how efficiently is it clearing out, what's the length of time it's taking to clear out, and are we having an impact on these things? We assume that something is normal, but if we introduce steaming, again, how do we impact the discharge that's coming out? How do we impact the lochia? That's the actual word for it, lochia. Then we looked at, again, just like how the vagina is coming back together. So it was like visual assessments, physical assessments of like, is it coming into alignment? Does it feel healthy? Is there swelling? Is there some swelling or not? Because some of that swelling is normal. And how long, again, does that swelling last? How long does it go down? Things like that. Again, just to assess recovery, as well as did anybody have any sutures or were stitched or tears, and looking at the healing of those tears, and is steaming impacting the healing of those tears. For signs, looking for signs of infection, looking for how it's feeling, looking for the mom's own perception of her healing around that area. They can easily assess, like, it feels itchy or it feels this. Those are things that I can't see from just looking at it. Like, it looks healthy, but maybe it feels this way, right? And then other, like, again, daily bowel, things of our health. Like, how are you peeing? How are you pooping? Are you able to come back to these things with ease, or is there some obstruction, or is there something? I think it's a big thing that it's like, it's a big myth that people are like, oh yeah, you have a baby, oh, just expect to pee on yourself for the rest of your life. Like, seriously?
Yeah.
That's not a normal thing.
I've heard that so often. Yeah, like it's just something that is part of, once you have a kid, you pee every time you laugh or cough. Like,
yeah, just get used to it.
Yeah.
that's not a normal thing. Like, that's not the level of health. And again, I think this is more of a societal thing, that it's like our larger systems don't really care about maternal and fetal health, or specifically maternal health, and just be like, well, whatever.
Honey, have you heard that before? Have you heard women talk about that before?
No, I've never heard that. That's why my face was like, what? No, I've never actually heard that. I mean, now that I think about it, like I've heard it like in passing on like
a funny TV show.
Like a show or a movie, and like, everybody's just like, But I've never heard like, nah, it's like, that's for real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a prolapse issue. Okay. Like things didn't go back into place where they're supposed to be after.
And people are just like, that's normal? Like,
yes.
Yeah, because the sort of party line is like, well, there's nothing that can be done, but there are actually several things that can be done to remedy that. And they're really simple.
Also, the more sinister party line is very much the perception of like, well, you're a woman. That's kind of what you get for, like the greatest sin types idea. Like, that's what it is. You're a woman, you have a period because you were the first one to eat the apple, right? So that's your punishment. You had a baby, so, you're the first one to eat your apple. So, you got,
it's going to hurt.
Punishment.
Yeah.
Dude, they're so whack. Ugh.
That's like an underlying tone with it a lot of times.
For sure. And then also that man is the standard, like the default, and that we're like a mutation.
So ridiculous.
Like the female is like we were made out of just a part. Like we're not even fully human. We're just like
exactly
a mutated rib of a man. So we just have like, the best thing to do is just cut out the uterus so it can be more similar to a man. Like that's sort of where that idea comes from.
So dumb.
Yeah. Totally. So, so we're looking at like, can steaming help people, one, with that myth, and really to not, like really help the uterus? Because it makes sense that can be an issue because of the work and the physiology around the pelvic floor. Mm-hmm. But for us to state that that's a normal thing, that's where we have to be like, says who?
Right.
And, like that we can't do anything about it. So, so we're assessing like bladder. How often are you peeing? What's the comfort level of peeing that you're experiencing? And then same thing with bowel movements and constipation. How are you doing that? Are you doing that with ease? Are you not doing that with ease? Is there pain? Is there tenderness? Are there hemorrhoids associated with it? Is the steaming impacting those hemorrhoids? Things like that. And then we assess also breastfeeding. So there are some indicators that it's like breastfeeding obviously is a totally different region. But wanting to look at breast health, wanting to look at this as an important aspect of the postpartum care, and can steaming impact even that? We don't know. Or is this, or as maybe a baseline, being like, okay, this is something that's like not physiologically related to the area that we're really focused to. Like we're not steaming the boobs, So just looking at having baseline stuff to help us so that we're not being biased with our work. And then I think that's predominantly it. Let me see. Oh, waist. We did measure the waist, which is also something I never do in the postpartum because why? It doesn't really matter. In the scheme of like, how your waist size is. Like again, the body image is it really important, right? And what are we really looking at? And so we are looking at like more so how the organs are moving down. How is there gas that's needing to be released? So looking at that differently with waist size, assessing like how the waist is coming back, how it's shifting that excess fluid, how the organs are coming back into the abdominal wall after the birth. I think those are the main. We did do weight again, kind of to have the baseline thing. Like, is this something that is impacting? Are you releasing more of like that birth weight? people are really concerned about their weights as well. But also it's something that doesn't inherently, if you think of steaming, you're not thinking of, I'm going to steam to lose weight, right? Like you're not inherently thinking of that. So using that as kind of like a baseline indicator to just have generality of something that's kind of non-biased, and seeing if steaming does impact. And if it does, why? Then we have to think about why. So I think, and uterine contractions, that's super important. Almost forgot that one. Uterine contractions and signs of preeclampsia. Again, I was assessing for other signs of preeclampsia besides the blood pressure, but you tend to feel uterine contractions after you give birth, and we wanted to measure the level of intensity and how long participants kept feeling the uterine contractions after they gave birth.
Did you know that women have cramps after giving birth?
Yes.
As the uterus goes back to size and shape.
I have heard that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, do you know Piper Lovemore?
I feel like that name sounds familiar, but I don't feel like I know them.
Okay. She's a birth worker. She lives in Hawaii. And she and I went to undergrad together, but she and Kelly are friends too.
Cool.
So when Piper read the study, she was just like, hey, did you guys record whether or not this is the first birth for all of the moms? Because sometimes that affects how long and how intense the contractions are. And was that factored into how they were measured? And I was like, I'll ask Raquel.
Yeah, I did record what number of birth. And so we did have a few moms who this was their second time birth. And that is the thing, right? The thing is that, again, like, is this normal or is it not normal? But there's this big, I would say misconception, but kind of like the bladder thing, that it's like, oh yeah, second baby, sorry, cramps are worse, deal with it.
Oh, really?
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's like, we'll just give you more Tylenol, kind of situation. For me, I have a whole different theory about it, about like, are we clearing effectively in the first birth? That then, and are we nourishing the uterus effectively in the first birth? That then the second birth is either worse because we haven't done that. You know what I mean? Or afterwards, the postpartum healing isn't as is more intense. With as far as cramps go, but that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah, we did look at. We didn't rate them differently, or factor it in as far as like these are first time moms or second time mom, but there were both within the group. This wasn't just a group of first time moms. This was a group of either first time or second time moms.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, do you remember if those second time moms were distributed evenly between the control and the steam groups?
That is something I'd have to look at. I don't really remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But I want to say that yes, we had at least one or two, at least two within each group.
Okay.
They had, yeah.
Very cool. Thank you for taking the time to go through all of those indicators.
Yeah,
like listing them, especially for those of our audience members who haven't had a chance to either read the study or flip through the slideshow. It kind of just gives them a taste of all the things we covered. Thank you. And thank you for gathering all the data on every single indicator and driving to all of the different homes of all the different moms. And thank you for that very difficult work. I appreciate it. So that was really the next question. How was it? Like, what was the experience of gathering all that data for this study? And how was it different than your normal service delivery?
Yeah, I mean, it was good. I loved going into different homes. It definitely put me in this like twilight zone of postpartum. I was like, it's either day 4 or day 8. Like, that's it. Like, there was no Friday or Saturday. There's nothing. And that's kind of typical for me anyway. I'm like, don't ask me what day it is. Don't ask me what year it is. I may give you a reliable answer one day, and I may tell you it's like 2025 some other day for some reason. Like I don't. So it put me in a really like haze of like, all I knew was like, it's either day 4, it's day 8, or 6 weeks for like months, that we were doing this.
Yeah.
And so that, going back to that care, it was challenging at times, especially because at one point I sprained my leg, not doing anything related to the study. I sprained it like after, like in the in-between time when I wasn't away, but I needed then like an assistant. I had to call an assistant at one point for myself to like help me out.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, I just need you to go and steam this person for this amount of time. Like, you don't have to take any of the measurements. That's not what we're doing right now. You just need it, so that I could recover for a day. So self-care was a little challenging because I was on call for a lot more people than I would ever have been on call for. And, on call, it's like they agreed to be part of the study. And so it means like, I have to be ready that within whatever day they give birth, I have to see them at day 4, and I have to see them on day 8, or I have to see them at 6 weeks, So those were more taxing, as like, again, just more of like the psychological prep for me. But it was fun to like go, and I love seeing different people's homes, having a different conversation with them, and providing that validation. I think what was hard is also not giving too much of like what I would give for my clients, right? Because I didn't want to, we were measuring something specific, right? And we didn't want any other factors, and having someone give you in-depth information about something can change everything, right? So just making sure that I was like sticking to the information that I was providing people, not giving excess information at that moment in time, right? There was a time and place to provide other information later. And then it was cool. It was like really cool to think about doing the study, and, everybody's amazing. All the participants were great. And, it was cool to see the different levels of support. And, I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah. That sounds like a lot of work. I am a was a social scientist by trade for many years. Yeah. And so I just love that stuff. And we talked about this a little bit since I went through like analyzing and writing up the data, but I just love that stuff. Like designing, remembering to be rigid, keeping all the rules in place. So nerdy. Were there anything in the study's findings that ended up surprising you? Like since you collected the data, you saw it sort of happening in real time, but once it was compiled, was there anything that you were like, oh, that's how it turned out?
Yeah. I mean, I think the blood pressure difference was a little bit more like, oh, I didn't realize that there was a difference really between groups who steamed and didn't steam and had their blood pressure shifted. I think what also surprised me, but not surprised me, I would say, or was just like what I found really interesting, was that the people who were steamed ended up bleeding a little bit longer in the beginning, right? And when they were steaming, but then their discharge stopped a lot sooner. So that was cool to me, because for me, that means that the uterus is clearing out more efficiently in the beginning and has the support to clear out. And then once it's clear, versus like the non-steep group, like they maybe stopped bleeding a little sooner in the beginning, but then we're having discharge for the full 6 weeks, if not longer.
Yeah, that was really interesting to me too. I mean, all of it was surprising to me because I haven't given birth and I don't work I'm not a birth worker either. So I was just like, wait, like every single thing was surprising. So, but that in itself, like, it was a nuance that I didn't expect to even have spoken to, just sort of like the cessation of bleeding happening at this time rather than a couple of days later, and what that meant for the long-term recovery and healing of the uterus itself, and the, you know, what it meant for like all of the other then indicators of the uterus. Like, that seems like to me, like, since the lochia came out faster, that then the contractions could go ahead and start and get done quicker. It could, you know, the uterus could go back to size more quickly because it doesn't have material left in it. Like, it just seems like it then impacts so many other things too.
Yeah. Totally.
That's really cool. And then what do you think are the major implications of this study for women in the greater society? Like, what do you think this could mean, you know, for everybody?
Yeah. Well, I think we really need to look at how we're taking care of our mothers, our birthing people, individually, but also as a community. I think that this study can generate a lot of awareness around what comes to mind is all the bullshit that we've been dealing with in the postpartum.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like the phrase that just like popped in my head. Like, actually peeing on yourself for the rest of your life, bullshit, right? Dealing with this other thing, bullshit. Like, having to have hemorrhoids, bullshit. Like, it feels like it's calling out all the bullshit. And
yeah, like constant pain during sex after giving birth, complete bullshit. Right. Like, unnecessary. Yeah.
Exactly. So I feel like it can open the door also, if we're willing to like potentially collaborate with midwives a lot more in their care in the postpartum. I mean, I feel like this could completely change how postpartum care is, even for obstetricians. If like the World Health Organization was like, we're going to get behind studying this, or we're going to get behind, you know, or even a major university is like, we're going to get behind studying this. I think that could change what is required and what is baseline for postpartum care. And I think that could change maternal health. I feel like that could change long-term, even like family leave and maternity leave and paternity leave and things like that. If we start being like, oh shit, actually, like, whoops, we messed up, you know, how we normally do. We messed up, our bad. We should have been doing this whole time. Or, okay, let's start doing that. So I think it has the potential to create a whole different type of structure. And even if it's not within that system, it's such a simple system of care and health that people can choose to take it in for themselves. Yeah. And not only the birthing parent, like, learn how to steam your sister, right? Like, learn how to steam your auntie, your uncle, like, learn how to steam and how to set up the water. Like, even if you have a steam practitioner come and show you, I know that that's what my service includes. I know that that's what part of your service includes. Like, if we're steaming somebody in the postpartum, I think we always say like, hey, have somebody there so that they can learn how to set it up, right? Because that increases the likelihood that they're going to do it if the mom's not the one, or the birthing person is not the one who has to bend down and fill a pot. It's simple, but like, when you're deciding like brushing your teeth and, you know, and feeding your child, like, the simple things are what makes you be like, I'm going to do this practice or not. Yeah. And having, again, I'm all about how are we calling in our community to support us, to be there. And this, I think, even if it didn't reach the larger scale systems, which I feel like it may trickle some time, but even if it didn't reach that larger system, us as aunts, as uncles, as sisters, as brothers, as grandmas, as nieces, as nephews, can support our families by learning how to set this up. And it's like, you want a baby shower gift, pay for a STEAM practitioner to come and do this for somebody, to come and show the family. And as long as one person in the family knows, now everybody in the family knows, you know, and that is a whole lot of people. So I feel like those are the larger implications. And then I feel like any time that we're supporting like a person who's birth, again, it's like, can we release that birth trauma? And it doesn't, you could have the best birth and still have birth trauma, meaning like there was a challenging moment that felt traumatic, right? And that took you out of your idea. It doesn't have to necessarily be something like, I didn't have this procedure. So if we're doing that for people, then again, for me, is the uterus is a center of creation, regardless of what you're choosing to create, whether it be a child, whether it be a business, whether it be an art piece, whether it be a delicious meal, whether it be a relationship. Part of that creative force is coming from your uterus. So if we're learning how to care for a uterus, again, this is just one phase of the uterus. If we're learning how to care through to the uterus at this phase, then this person is just going to be more connected to how they need to serve in this world more fully. And for me, that makes a better world, right? If someone's in there more fully in their power to be like, I'm doing this.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Thank you for saying it like that. Like, I mean, I think also pairing that with what you said earlier about, you know, a person who is born possessing a scrotum has really important, you know, responsibilities that come along with that. And that likewise, if you have a uterus, there's a certain responsibilities that go with that. And we all draw from those spaces for creative energy and creative power. And the ways that we sort of, I understand the way that we're made in the image of God is that we're creators, right? So that's really sort of our most sacred and most godlike selves when we're in that space. So separation from those is really sort of like a separation from our own divinity.
Mache.
Baby, do you have more questions?
No, I'm just ready to like watch this episode over and over.
Like, I feel almost like you would say something and then I would get so lost in like thinking about that thing. And I'd be like, wait, she's saying something else and I'm missing it.
This whole episode, like I'm just like,
well, you can have me back as many times as we need to dive into those deeper, do those deeper dives from this piece.
Thank you. Yeah, you are amazing. Thank you so much. Will you tell our audiences where to find you, how to follow you, how to hire you as a midwife? Like, how do we find you?
Totally. I am in LA, first and foremost, in LA surrounding areas. So if somebody wants a session, in-person session, you can reach out via my website. So my website is Raquel, RAQUEL .com, not at. So my first and last name, RaquelLemus.com. And my email is hello@RaquelLemus.com. And on Instagram, I am Community Partera. So feel free to send me a message. Email's always good. Reach out if you need. Stay tuned because I will be having some classes and some sales coming up on those classes and on those services. And I teach a number of like weekly classes and monthly classes for prenatal folks and postpartum families. And I lead a weekly yoga class, candlelight yoga class at People's Yoga in East LA. So if you're in the area, come on through, come say hi, introduce yourself. And I think those are the main things.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all the things that you do.
Thank you so much for having me. It's
Thank
been
you.
such a pleasure chatting with you both.
Now it's time for. Don't. You're about to.
Mansplaining.
That was awful. Okay. No, I'm not using that one.
Mansplaining. Mansplaining.
What is happening? All right. Now it's time for mansplaining with Mike. I'm taking the power away from her. She don't know what to do with that power. It's too much. So today we have our guest, Madam Raquel Lemus. And look, I'm gonna just give my little precursor today. Like, this episode was so amazing and like so eye-opening for me that I just kept zoning out. So on this mansplaining for today, like, look, I'm all over the place. I don't know what I learned. I don't remember stuff because I just already planned on watching this episode again or whatever. So I'm gonna just do my best and don't hold it against me. I'm not expecting much from myself during this particular segment.
Learning is a process.
So-
we respect the process.
Look, it was just great. It was just great. Like, I don't know, you know. I love when I get in these spaces where like I just get to learn so much and like challenge some thoughts that I've had and all kinds of stuff. So, okay. So, man, I'm trying to go down these questions and like, whew. All right. I don't remember the origins. I don't remember the bio. I don't remember. Oh, okay. I guess I can start here. This question, why'd you choose midwifery? She was like, I ain't choose the streets. The streets chose me. She was like, you know, which is a part of a conversation that needs to be had like outside of this. But, you know, I definitely believe that we choose our path before we're manifested on this earth. And she echoed that sentiment, saying that more than likely she chose this path on her way to this planet. So it's before birth, she's been on this path, you know. The difference between obstetrician and midwife and the doula. Okay, let's see where I am with this. The obstetrician is the medical, it's like the medical side of anything dealing with pregnancy and birth and stuff. And so that's like medically trained. They're actual doctors and they've gone through medical school and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And the midwife is also medically trained and, you know, they can directly get into the field or, I don't remember what it is. What's the, I don't want to call it indirect, but it was like, you can go straight into it. And then it was what else was it?
Do you want to? Go ahead.
Direct entry.
Direct entry.
Or direct entry or nurse midwifery. So nursing.
Right. Nurse midwifery. Okay. Yeah, I was just like, indirect. But, yeah, so on the nursing side, they go through nursing school and, you know, like I said, also have medical training. And the doula does not have medical training, but they get trained and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So.
And very importantly, doulas focus on the mom's health.
Right.
And support and advocating for the mom.
Right. Cool. She talked about, of course, incorporating some cultural practices and cultural knowledge in her work. She's Afro-Latina, and she, is made up of a lot of different people in her ancestry. And so she's using different parts of different cultures to, bring forth great experiences and great education to her clients and the families who she supports. Okay. She's talked about meeting Kelly from Steamy Chick early on and becoming friendly and being an OG steam chair owner. And one day we're going to sell those chairs to the Smithsonian. And talked about her entry point into becoming involved with the STEAM study. And, nobody says no to Kelly. When she calls, you answer, and you're just like, all right, we'll do it. Because Kelly's a bully. But, I read the STEAM study, and I was really impressed by the work that Raquel did on it, because I was just like, first of all, I'm not that knowledgeable in a lot of these spaces just because I haven't put myself in the place to learn about this kind of stuff. So now that I'm learning, I'm just really fascinated by the types of work that is going into making this stuff. So Raquel, you did a really good job on choosing the different indicators for study and choosing what areas to study and why and all that kind of stuff. It was very eye-opening for me to read the study. So thank you for your work on that stuff. I think I zoned out at the time. If you said some of the findings surprised you, I don't believe they did. I believe they were in line with the direction that you were already thinking. I'm not sure, though. The blood pressure? I was zoned out. Sorry. Sorry, Raquel. But yeah, that was today's episode. Yay! Yeah, I want to go back through so that I can absorb.
That was great.
This episode
was great. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of ground that was covered.
Yeah.
And you did a great job as usual. Thank you for mansplaining that to us.
Sorry, guys.
And one of the great things about Hot and Steamy is that all of these podcasts are available in perpetuity on our website, so you can go back and watch them over and over again. And then there are also some extras you can pick up and watch too. Oh, yeah. Okay. So thanks again, Raquel.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll have you on again, maybe in 2020, maybe after your trip. We'll be able to talk about some new things you learned.
Let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Hot and Steamy podcast. Feedback is gold, so please like, comment, share, and subscribe. This podcast was made possible by our sponsors, Kelly Garza of Steamy Chick and Kimberly Ann Johnson of Magamamas. Visit our website for more information on them and our other guests, to view extras, and to purchase merch. That's www.hotsteamypodcast.com. www.hotsteamypodcast.com.